You were the first generation in history handed a house key before you were even old enough to lose one. No one called it neglect, they called it independence. You made your own dinner, solved your own fights, and sometimes cried in a room where no one was listening. Somewhere in those quiet afternoons, you learned the most dangerous lesson a child can ever learn: I don't need anyone. If you were born between 1965 and 1980, this isn't a video about history, it's a video about you, about the silence you grew up in, and the strength you built out of it, whether you wanted to or not. Picture it, it's 4:15 in the afternoon, the school bus pulls away, and you're standing on the sidewalk looking at a dark, empty house. You dig the key out from under the doormat, or maybe it hangs from a string around your neck, tucked under your shirt, a secret you carried without ever really thinking of it as strange. You let yourself in, turn on the TV not for entertainment but for noise, for something that sounds like company, and make yourself a snack because your parents won't be home for hours. That was the deal, that was survival, in a world changing shape faster than anyone could keep up with. You do your homework alone, learn what the house sounds like when it creaks, and slowly come to understand that being alone isn't an emergency, it's just Tuesday. You learn to comfort yourself because there's no one else in the room to do it, and you tell yourself you're fine, because what other option is there? Psychologists call this the Latchkey generation, but that phrase hides more than it explains. What it really means is that an entire generation of children raised themselves emotionally while the adults around them were consumed by forces bigger than any one family could control. Divorce rates tripled, dual-income households became the norm almost overnight, and there was no guidebook for any of it. You weren't ignored because you weren't loved, you were ignored because the people raising you were drowning too, in work, exhaustion, and a culture that hadn't yet learned the word burnout. So your nervous system adapted the only way it could. It became hyper-independent, not because independence was some noble trait, but because dependence had started to feel dangerous. Your brain made you a quiet deal: need less, expect less, and you'll never be let down again. That deal kept you safe as a child. The problem is, it never got renegotiated. And this is the part that really stings if you let it land. That independence you're proud of, the thing people compliment you on, you're so low maintenance, you never ask for help, isn't confidence. It's a wound wearing a very convincing costume. Somewhere inside you is still that kid with the key around their neck, quietly deciding that if they don't need anyone, no one can let them down. You built an entire identity around never needing rescue, which means even now, in your closest relationships, asking for help doesn't feel like connection. It feels like exposure. So instead you carry things alone, say I'm fine on autopilot, and quietly exhaust yourself rather than risk being disappointed again. That's not weakness. That was a 9-year-old's genius solution to a problem no 9-year-old should have ever had to solve. You just never told that 9-year-old the emergency is over. You start seeing it everywhere once you know where to look. The friend who never texts first, not because they don't care, but because reaching out means risking a silence they learned long ago to expect. The coworker who takes on everything and refuses delegation, quietly resenting that no one notices how tired they are, while never once saying, I need help. The partner who handles every crisis alone and only mentions it afterward, almost as an afterthought. Or maybe it's you now, as a parent, overcompensating, answering every text within seconds, terrified of recreating even one afternoon of the silence you remember. Or maybe it's something smaller, the way you flinch slightly when someone says that I'm here for you, because some quiet part of you still doesn't quite believe it. But here's the twist that changes everything: that independence didn't just wound you, it also built something extraordinary. You became the generation that doesn't panic, that figures it out, that shows up fully for the people you love precisely because nobody fully showed up for you. Your resilience isn't fake, it was forged in empty houses and quiet afternoons, and it's genuinely yours. The twist isn't that your independence is a lie you need to tear down, it's that you're allowed to keep the strength and still put the armor down sometimes. You don't have to choose between being capable and being cared for. That was never truly the deal. That was just the only option a child had. And you're not a child anymore. You didn't get a childhood that taught you it's safe to need people. Nobody sat you down and told you that reaching out isn't weakness, that an empty house doesn't mean an empty life, that letting someone in isn't the same as being let down. But you can still learn that now. It's not too late. It was never too late. Every time you let someone help you, and you actually let yourself believe they mean it, you're not undoing your strength. You're finally finishing something that got interrupted a long time ago. The kid with the key isn't standing outside in the cold anymore. They're allowed to come inside now. And so are you.